Take your Bibles and turn to Exodus chapter 20. I've been teaching on the 10 Commandments, and today I'm going to skip one because it's Father's Day, and we'll go back and get the other one later. But we're going to talk about honoring your mother and your father, since it is Father's Day, and we're going to talk about the Sabbath next week. Now, the Sabbath next week is going to answer a lot of questions, and it's really one of the most controversial 10 Commandments. It's the only 10 Commandment that's not mentioned in the New Testament. So we're going to talk about that next week. But this week, we're going to talk about honoring your father and your mother. And mainly, we're going to talk, I guess, dads mainly today. I had a dear friend who died. I was trying to figure out if it's been 2 years or 3 years. His name was Frank Drinkwine. Frank was my buddy. We used to go out knocking on doors together. We'd go to lunch together. As a matter of fact, I owe him a lunch because he bought mine the last time we went. And we were about the same age. I may have been a little bit older than him. And one day I got the phone call that he was actually, on a Wednesday night, he was playing basketball with some of the teenagers at church. And he started feeling tired. He went in his car and sat down, and they found him in his car passed out. They took him to the hospital. He never was conscious again. And Frank, everybody thought he was healthy. I was the one that was sickly. He was the one that was healthy, so I always thought I would go before he would. And I kind of feel like he cut line in front of me to get to heaven before me. And that's not fair, but anyway, I'll talk to him when I get to heaven about that. But the reason I'm mentioning Frank today is because I went to his funeral, and it was one of the most unusual funerals I'd ever seen. For several reasons. One reason, all of his kids, he had, I think, 4 boys and 1 girl. Or maybe he had 5 boys. I could never keep up with all the kids he had. Frank was an unusual guy. He loved working with children. As a matter of fact, the fellow that Terry was talking about last week about was so good working with children, I'm pretty sure he was talking about Frank Drinkwine. But at his funeral, all of his children came up and they shared. And it's the first time I'd seen that. And it was very emotional, and they cried and wept. But they were so honoring to their father. And at Father's Day, when I think about honoring your father and mother, to think of someone coming to the end of their life and having their children honor them, that's got to be one of the greatest accomplishments of life. You know, there's a lot of great things men have done in life, but I tell you, I can think of few better than having a family that loves you and having your children honor you. And as they got up and shared and talked, it was just amazing. It was a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful thing. And I was thinking about that. And I was thinking, there are few things as beautiful in life as children honoring their parents. I tell you, it's just beautiful to see them honoring them with their lips and with their life. Also, there's very few things as ugly as a child dishonoring their parents. I think there was something that happened just in the last few weeks about a daughter who tried to kill her mother. Did anybody hear that? There was a plan. I believe she planned with her teenage friend, and they were going to kill her mom. And I tell you, there's few things as ugly. It's just inappropriate. It just doesn't fit. It's just not right for a child to dishonor their parents. Why is this so important? I mean, this is one of the 10 Commandments. It's one of the top 10, okay? God, in all of what He desires, He says, I want a family to love each other, to be together. I want the children to honor their father. Why is that important to God? I think there's several reasons. I think one thing is the family is the foundation of our society. A family is what holds us together. Family is so important. I believe also that a family is a picture of the love of God. The Bible talks about the bride of Christ. A husband and wife relationship is a picture of God's love towards us. So let me tell you something, guys. It's more important than our opinions and what we want. We are representing God. And wives, it's more important that you honor your husband and be yielded and obedient to him like you would to God. It's a picture of God. And I tell you, when you have this beautiful picture, and that doesn't mean that men should lord over their wives, and I don't believe that is a good picture of God. That doesn't honor God for men to be brutes and dominating and all that. That doesn't honor God, but we need to be tender towards our wife like God is to us. But it is a picture, but it's very important. Do you know, and I don't think we ought to do this today, but it may come to that one day when Jesus is ruling here with a rod of iron. But in the Old Testament, if a child dishonored their parents, guess what the penalty was? Stoning. It was so important to God that He did not want a bunch of rebellious kids, a bunch of kids that dishonored their parents. It was so important that you did not dishonor your parents, not with your life, not with your lips, not with your words, not with talking back. You see, God has an order of things, and God has a picture of what He wants to present to this world, and part of it is a loving family. And so this morning, and I want to be very brief because I'm hoping my family takes me out to eat today. Amen? I mean, listen well, children, to this sermon. You honor your daddy by taking him to his favorite restaurant and paying. So this morning, I want us to see the responsibility, and I'm going to preach to both. Okay, I'm going to preach to the children today. And by the way, you're a child. If your parents are still here on this earth, I've got a responsibility to my mom. Now, my dad passed away almost 10 years ago. But I'm a child. I have a responsibility to my mom, to honor her. And so I'm speaking to children, and then I'm going to speak to parents, and I'm going to speak to both of us, okay? Very briefly. But the first thing I want us to see is there is a respect that is demanded. There is a respect that children give to their parents that is demanded, that is commanded by God, that every child should respect their parents. You say, Brother Carl, you don't know my parents. And I tell you, I know some of you who did not have a good home life. There were some of you that maybe you've got bad memories of your daddy, or maybe you've got bad memories of your mama. And I'm sorry about that, and I know that some of you were greatly hurt by your parents. But I'm telling you, even in the midst of the hurt, you still have a command to honor your mom and dad. That means you erase the bitterness. You know what? I can look at my life and my dad, more so than my mom, but in my dad's, in our relationship, there were some times that were not good. There were some times where I have some bad memories. But you know, I choose to focus on the good memories. The fact that He provided for me. The fact that He worked hard for many years so that I could have things. And the fact that my daddy was broken because he didn't have a good home life. He had a terrible home life. And so he was broken. And so it was hard for him to know how to be a dad because he didn't have a dad that modeled it to him. And so my daddy was wounded. He was hurt. And the wound that he had came through, and he wounded me some. But that does not give me a right to dishonor my father. And so we need to honor. We need to honor Parents with our mouth. Okay, I'm going to mix in a little bit of parent and child, but the way that children today talk to their parents in disrespect is dishonoring not only to their parents but to God. When kids talk back, argue, and disrespect their parents with their mouths, let me tell you something. You say, I'm old-fashioned. Okay, I'll take that. But I tell you what, children ought to say yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. They ought to honor their parents with their lips. Well, Brother Carl, my child doesn't do that. Well, you need to demand that they do that. It's not acceptable for a child to throw a fit and sass their mom and daddy and talk back to their mom and daddy. You say, man, you're just as old-fashioned. Yeah, I'm about 2,000 years old-fashioned. You're kind of narrow-minded. Yeah, my ears may rub together. But I tell you what, I believe what I'm telling you is the truth, and you're going to have trouble later if you let your children talk back to you. You can't do it. You can't do it. You're hurting your children if you let them do that. People aren't going to like them. Nobody likes a brat. Nobody likes somebody who's so self-serving and self-centered and they just want their way. No, you need to teach your children to respect you. I've heard some teenagers call their dad the old man. Now, unless that's an endearing term, and I got a feeling most of the time it's not, that's dishonoring to your parents. You see, when you allow your children to talk back, you are placing your children in danger. And I tell you what, since I hadn't offended too many people yet, let me go ahead right now. Moms, when you talk disrespectful to your husband, you're putting an example for your children to do the same thing. You say, well, Brother Carl, I can't help it. Sometimes I get so mad at him, I get so angry, I just can't help it, and it comes out of my mouth. Well, make sure those little ears aren't around. If you got to deal with a situation, deal with it in private. But don't dishonor your husband in front of your children. Well, I'm married to an idiot. Man, we're driving down the road and you know, he turns left and he should have turned right and I have to correct him all the time. Listen, don't correct him in front of your children. I'm telling you, you're putting your children in danger when you do that. You honor your parents with your life. How do you do that? With obedience. Now, what is obedience? Obedience is doing what your parents tell you to do without delay and without a bad attitude. You see, if my mama said, Carl, take out the trash, she didn't mean take out the trash tomorrow. She meant take it out right now. And if I said, Mama, I don't want to take the trash, I'll do it later. I want to do something else. You know what? That is not obedience. Mom, my favorite show's on TV. Can't you see I'm laying here on the couch watching my favorite cartoon show on TV? And you want me to break my concentration on this cartoon and go take out the trash right now? And Mama said, you heard me, get up and take out the trash. And so I get up and I'm stomping. I pick up the trash can and I'm like, good night. I got friends who, I bet you their mom doesn't make them take out the trash, and I've got to always do something. It's always something. I've got a bad attitude and I'm griping and complaining. Let me tell you something. That is not obedience either. Obedience is to do what you're told to do it without delay, and do it with a good attitude. And I tell you what, moms and dads, we need to expect that out of our children. Because if we let them have a bad attitude, if we don't deal with that situation, it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And I tell you, when they're real little and they throw a temper tantrum, and you're saying, isn't that cute? Listen, when they're 16, it ain't so cute. And when they're 21, it's not cute at all. And when he gets older, it's trouble. It's trouble. Listen, your life is going to be worse. Your life is going to have heartache and headache if you don't make your children respect you. Now, how do you do that? I'm not saying you yell at them and you just tell them what they need to do. When they don't do it, they get disciplined. And that may mean turning them over your knee, never in anger. Some kids need a spanking. Never spank a child in anger. If you're angry, you wait. Make them go to their room and sit there an hour till you cool off. Because spankings in anger are not productive. They're counterproductive. They just make kids angry. You may want to take something from them. If it may be something they like to do. There's all kinds of ways. See, you have currency. Currency is what that kid likes. And so you need to learn what currency works. It may be taking something away that they want is a way to discipline your children. But the Bible teaches that spankings are not wrong if they're done correctly. That means you can go into their room and you sit down with them and you say, what did you do wrong? And make sure they understand what they did wrong and let them know the consequences. And you can tell them, you can say, you know what, Daddy hates to spank. And I tell you what, I hated to spank most of the time. I did. It messes up the whole house. It makes a bad spirit in the house. It's just not good. I don't like spankings. But you know what? I had to do it sometimes. And I had to bend them over the knee and give them a spanking. And that is scriptural if it's done correctly, not in anger. God provided a place where you can perform spankings. By the way, that's the only place you ever ought to hit a child. And never in the face. But God put a place with lots of padding. Some have more padding than others. And it's the place where you can sit down and there can be some pain without any real physical damage, okay? But you say, Brother Carl, I don't like doing that. And I know people that have raised their kids and they didn't do much spankings. But you know what the currency is, what your kid likes. And you know how to take away the things that they like. And so there needs to be both negative and positive discipline. But you can't just let your kids talk back to you and talk and sass you and disobey you when you ask them to do something. And if maybe they didn't hear you the first time, so maybe say it twice. Maybe I'm trying to think of a name of somebody not here that I wouldn't offend. Anyway, you say to the little girl, and you say, do this, and they don't do it, and so maybe they didn't hear me, so I'll say it again real clear so they'll hear me. And then you say it a second time and they didn't hear you. If you have to tell them 3 times, they're in disobedience, and you need to deal with it. You know how you can tell? I heard a preacher say this years ago. You can tell who's the boss of your house at bedtime. When you tell your child it's time to go to bed, do they fight? Do you have to tell them 10 times? Do you have to fight with them? Do you have to beg them? Listen, you know what you're doing? It's amazing how some of these kids have trained their parents. They know how to get their way. They figured it out. Let me tell you one thing. I heard this and I believe it. A child never gets what they cry for. I know some kids, they've got it down pat. All they have to do, they're not sad. They just, and the parents are like, oh, I can't take that crying. Here, give it to them. And they give them whatever they want when they cry. You know what? You're training them. I'll just cry and get my way. You know, you need to sit down and have a talk when they get a little older and say, you know, honey, if you hurt your knee, if you fall down and you hurt yourself, you can cry, and you can come and sit on Daddy's lap and put your head on my shoulder and cry as much as you want to. If somebody hurts your feelings and they call you a name and it breaks your heart, and you come in here and you can cry all you want to. But if you just want something and you're going to cry to get what you want, just mark it down. If you cry, you ain't getting it. That is not the way you get things. And I tell you, you'll stop a lot of the crying at your house. But you got to stick to your guns. And you got to be consistent. I tell you what, a lot of it is just we're just plain too lazy to get up and deal with it. I mean, we're sitting there watching the Titans on TV, you know, and your kid messes up, and man, it's a big important, it's third down, and they're about to get a first down against the Ravens. Don't you hate the Ravens? I tell you. Well, I better not tell you. But you're there, and you don't want to get up and deal with your kids. And so you let them go, and you let it go, and you let it go. And sometimes it's just we're too lazy to deal with it. We don't want to mess with it. We'd rather not interrupt what we're doing. Let me tell you how you dishonor your parents. David, what was the one thing that I said was worse than anything you could do to me as a child? Lie. Did he lie to me? You better believe he did. I asked him, I said, son, why'd you lie to me then? He said, Dad, I guess the number one reason I lied to you is I didn't want to hurt you and disappoint you. But let me tell you how you dishonor your parents. When you lie to them. I believe, and I used to say this, look, if you do something bad, that's bad, you might get disciplined, but if you lie about it, that is really going to make me mad. Why? Because I can help him if he gets in trouble if he won't lie to me. Lying is the single most stupid thing you can do when you lie to your parents. And you know what David asked me? Well, Dad, did you lie to your parents? Go play, son. Yeah, I did sometimes. And I tell you, it was stupid when I did. You know why? There's several reasons why. Let me tell you why it's stupid. Nobody loves you like your mom and daddy. Therefore, when you lie to them, you hurt the opportunity for them to help you. And I tell you what, if you've got some friends, and teenagers, they got friends who say, hey, let's go do this. We won't tell your parents. Listen, mark them down. They're not a good friend. You don't need to listen to them. Anybody that tells you to do something to disobey your parents is not your friend, and then they'll tell you to lie about it. The person who loves me most on this earth, not counting God, okay? The person who loves me most, who wants me to do well, who wants what's best for me, why would I lie to them when they're wanting to help me? It's dumb, isn't it? And so you honor your parents when you tell them the truth. Why should you not lie to your parents? And I tell you, even when you get older. My mama, when she was sick in the hospital, she'd say, is there something bad wrong with me and you're not telling me? I want you to be honest with me. Don't you lie to me. And I just made a deal with Mama. I said, Mama, I'll tell you what, no matter how bad it is, I will tell you the truth. You don't have to worry. Because my mom worries. She's the biggest worrier in the world. And if I'm telling her she would worry about anything. She could be fine. Mom, you're fine. They said you're fine. You're not telling me the whole truth, are you? You're afraid you're going to hurt my feelings. You're afraid I'm going to get this. And so I said, Mom, I'll tell you what, no matter how bad it is, I will tell you the truth. And so if that doctor tells me something, I got to make sure I tell it straight to Mom. You say, well, I don't think they ought to know if they're bad sick. You know what? You do what you think is right. But I tell you what, I think if a person's bad sick, they got a right to know about it. I believe if a person's about to die, somebody ought to tell them the truth. It's not easy. A lot of times we don't do it because we don't want to do it because we're afraid of how they may react. But we got to be honest. Because they love us. And number two, because they have experience. I remember y'all remember the Y2K scare? You know, everybody said Y2K, the world's coming to an end. You know, all the computers are going to crash. My dad was still alive, and I said, Dad, I need to explain something to you. I know you don't understand computers. And, I am so savvy at computers. I wanted to explain it to my dad. My kids are laughing because they know, if I send an email and it gets there, this is a great thing in my life. First of all, I get Chuck calls me. He called me the other day and said, I didn't email you because it takes you 3 weeks to check your emails. And he's right on that. But I sat down with my daddy and I said, Dad, these computers may crash. And my dad said, Son, I made it through the Depression. I made it through World War II. I think we'll make it through this. I ain't going to worry about it. And everybody worried about it and nothing happened. He was right. You know why? Because he's lived long enough. He's got more sense. I believe one of the roles God may have for me in these later years of my life is to train younger preachers. I meet with 8 guys every week, and it's growing. And I meet with these guys on Tuesday nights. I meet with 4 of them on Tuesday nights. I meet some others in the morning. And I'm trying to teach them some things so that when I'm off the scene, they'll be my footprint, I'll still have a footprint left on this earth. And things may get bad, and we need some good prophets of God. And so I call it the School of the Prophets. And these men are strong. Their feet are steadier than mine. You saw me almost trip just a minute ago. Because I have neuropathy in my feet, I lose my balance a whole lot. I have trouble walking sometimes. But their feet are sure. Their hands are steady. They've got strength. They just don't have any sense. Because they ain't done it yet. Our preacher used to say, fellas, you've studied, you've read all the books, you've gone through the classes, and we're about to graduate from Bible college to go out in the world. And he said, you still ain't got any sense till you go do it. And so I feel like part of my job is some of the things I've learned, and I've learned through the School of Hard Knocks, and some things I've learned by mistakes, I can train them. I can teach that to these guys. I think that's part of that because I've got experience. Well, let me tell you something. Your parents have some experience that you don't have. It'd be wise to listen to them. Now, I tell you, my mom is 87. She's going to be 88 in October. It's a good thing she ain't here. She'd be mad that I told y'all that. And, maybe she doesn't think as clear about some things. I'll tell you what, if you borrowed any money, she'll remember that to the penny. I tell you, she doesn't forget that. And, maybe she doesn't think as clearly, but I tell you what, I still value her opinion because she's been around a while and she's got experience that I don't have. She has experienced things I haven't experienced. So we need to listen. I spent way too much time on point number 1. Let me just mention point number 2. There is a respect that is deserved. In other words, let me just say this quickly. Parents, we can say, our children ought to respect us. Yeah, but you ought to live a life worthy of respect. Respect is deserved. And so you need to be faithful to God so that your children will look up to you. It's important for me to be faithful. I need to preach the best I can, no matter if there's 10 people here or 50 people here. That shouldn't matter. What should matter is I ought to do my best for my Lord. I need to be faithful. If I tell somebody I'm going to do something, I need to do it. If I tell somebody I'm going to be somewhere, I need to be there. I need to be faithful. Why? Because I'm an example to my children. I need to be fair. I need to be balanced. I need to have the right balance of grace and truth. of mercy and law. Sometimes, boy, that's a hard thing to balance, isn't it? You know, sometimes as a parent you feel like, man, I'm getting too strict. I need to let up. And then sometimes you let up and you say, man, I've gotten too soft. I got to get them back on track. And they're slacking off, and I need to. And so it's a constant thing. You go back and forth. But we need to be balanced and fair. Number 3, and I'm going to close with this, okay? It is a reward. This commandment is a reward to be delivered. Now, in the passage of Scripture where it says, honor your mother and father, it's not only a command, it is a promise. What is the promise that goes with that command? You'll live long on the earth. And there's another part with that. Anybody remember? What's that? It will go well with you. If you honor your parents, it means it'll help you live longer and it'll help you live better. It will lengthen your days and it will lighten your burden. Now, it just makes sense. If I listen to my mama, I'll probably live longer. Mama says, son, don't go play out in the street. Why, Mama? Because there's big old trucks that are in the street and they'll crush you. Nah, I don't believe that. I'm going to go play out in the street. You see how my life could be shortened by disobeying my mother and daddy? So it just makes good sense. And by the way, your life can be lengthened. I was listening to a guy on the radio. He lives in California. His first name's John, and his last name is Mac. You know what he said? He said, these people, God has your days numbered. The sovereignty of God, God knows exactly when you're going to die, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I thought about this verse. He said, these people that are eating right and exercising, well, that may help the quality of your life, but that's not going to add any more days to your life. I don't believe that. Look, the Seventh-day Adventists, they live longer than Baptists. You know why? Because they eat better than us. It's not because God loves them better. We know that, right? God doesn't love Seventh-day Adventists better than Baptists. Now, that way, you can go to certain places in the world where people live really long days. Does that mean God loves them better? No, it's because they take better care of yourself. I was having lunch with a guy who is a 5-point Calvinist, and he was eating this junk food. I'll tell you what, Tim, I'm trying to do better. This week I'm going to do really good. My family's out of town, and I am not going to Popeyes. I've already made my commitment. But I'm sitting there, and I said, man, you're eating that stuff. Don't you know that'll kill you? And he goes, listen, God, I believe in the sovereignty of God, and I'm going to die when I die, so it doesn't matter what I eat. I'll eat whatever I want to, and I'll die because I believe in the sovereignty of God. Now, I didn't say anything, but I thought to myself, I thought they were supposed to be the intellectuals. That's about the dumbest thing I've ever heard. They come across like, well, never mind. Don't let me get into that. I love my Calvinist friends. But this says here, it clearly says that our days are determined by our decisions that we make. And obeying our parents is good for us living long. And then number 2, and I'm going to close on this. If we honor our parents, we'll have a much better life. We'll have a much better life. Because when we disobey our parents, we make bad decisions and we suffer the consequences of those decisions. How many tears have been shed that would have never been shed if we'd have just obeyed our parents, if we'd just done what they said? You want a hard life? You want a rough life? You want a heavy burden? You want a burden on you? You want headache and heartache and sorrow and trouble? Let me tell you what you do. Dishonor your parents. But if you honor your parents, it will be well with you. Your days will be lengthened and your days will be lightened. Your burden will be light. Let's bow for prayer.